name is Monique.
And I'm Naveen from Before You Play.
And today we are going to be doing our final wrap-up for the West Kingdom Trilogy.
Yes, Monique and I, we played through all three of the games in the West Kingdom Trilogy. They are designed by Shem Phillips and S.J. McDonald, published by Garfield Games and Renegade Games here in the U.S. And if you're not familiar what we're talking about, Monique and I played through all three of these games with the Tomesaga expansion, which basically links and connects all three of the games. So if you missed any of those, we'll leave a link to our series up in the corner. But we're basically going to talk about kind of our experience, what we learned from it, and go from there.
And of course, our final rankings, right? And so if you're not familiar with this series, if you're just joining us now, this is the Architects, Paladins, and Viscounts of the West Kingdom. We also did the Age of Artisans expansion for Architects of sorts. We did it in a co-op scenario, and the Tome Saga. And so going into this series, you know, this was my idea to play it because I think between the two of us, I was the only one who had played one of them.
Yes, when Monique pitched this idea to me, I had not played any of these, so I knew very, very little about it. The only thing I knew was one time at a convention, we had a group of friends that played Paladins, and we were told that it took them about 4 to 5 hours to finish that game. And that's all I knew about any of these three games was like, wow, that game takes that long. So I was kind of going in the blind.
And so I think that's part of the reason why we hadn't played it until now is because we were thinking, oh gosh, all those games are really long.
Yes.
When I had played Architects the first time, we played in a 3-player game and I thought it was really interesting. And at the time I don't even think these two were released yet.
Maybe not.
So when the next two games were released, I thought, okay, so is it going to be the same as this one? Right?
Yeah, is it just Architects 2.0?
Right.
Like, what exactly is it?
And that's, I feel like, something that tends to happen with other trilogies or even movies, right? They do this where it's kind of like a rehashing of the same game with just like this mechanic or, you know, this is a little bit different, but it's pretty much the same game. The thing that I was really impressed by with this trilogy is that it is not like that at all. These are 3 individual games that play completely differently. They're different weights. They have different mechanics, but they're all the same kind of theme, like interwoven theme.
It is all tied together, and so for that reason, I think it's very interesting that if you like or dislike one of them, we still recommend that you play the rest of the series because if you don't like one of the games, that should not be the kind of the barometer or the measuring stick for the other 2 games. We'd highly recommend it because they're so different. There's maybe something there for you, and vice versa. Maybe you liked one game and maybe you won't like another one. So we highly recommend you try and test it out.
Yeah, if any of this looked interesting to you at all, or if you enjoy Euro mechanics, you know, it's almost like a perfect marriage between mechanics and theme, because a lot of times in our experience when we play Euro games, it's like a heavy emphasis on the mechanics. Really, right? Like that is typically what characterizes a Euro game.
Right.
But here we have this, this running theme that goes through them all, and mechanics that try to complement that theme. We have a running theme of virtue. It's almost like choosing between being virtuous or being non-virtuous or being a criminal, I guess, right? But it's not necessarily good or bad. Depending on the way that the game goes, that might not be a bad thing. That might cause you to win the game.
Yes, it's not like, you know, being good is going to be the good strategy because you can use being bad as the good strategy.
Exactly.
As well. So it's very interesting. If you're not familiar, by the way, Architects, you're building up the city and the society. Paladins, you're trying to defend it / convert people to live in the society. And then Viscounts, it's a flourishing...
well, it's not a flourishing kingdom. You're trying to make it into
You're trying to
one.
make it, yes, by having commerce and doing different things with your Viscounts. So that's kind of going back to the thematic ties of all 3 games.
And so I think these 2 designers did a wonderful job on this trilogy. You know, they really made each game stand out on their own. You can play them as their own independent game, or you can do the entire campaign and have a very rich experience, in my opinion.
Yeah, I didn't have too much familiarity with these designers going into this. The only other game that I had played once was Noctiluca, which is kind of a much lighter game compared to all 3 of these.
Yes.
I did demo one round of Raiders of the North Sea, but it was so long ago. It was kind of like real quick, so I really don't have too much grasp on that game or that whole series of games. So I'm very, very impressed with these 2 designers and what they were able to create here.
And one last bit before we start talking about our ranking, check out how perfect these box sizes are.
Yeah.
Right? I think they're a perfect square. They're definitely the same size. You know, you can line them up. We have a Calyx shelf where we put all our games, and these we have an entire West Kingdom cubby.
Exactly, yeah.
We put them all of them are going to stay on there. You know, these are keeper games for us, which is saying a lot because we're typically into heavier games than this. Like that's kind of like our bread and butter.
Right.
But we really thoroughly enjoy this series.
Yeah, totally. And I really appreciate it when designers and publishers, manufacturers can get a nice thick game into a nice compact little box like this. I think it's perfect.
Yeah, they have your shelf space in mind.
Yes, exactly.
All right, so let's start with the Tomesaga.
Yes.
So we just want to briefly talk about this before we do the ranking because this is a big part of the experience that we had.
Yeah, it's a driving force.
Thank you to everybody out there who recommended this because I really enjoyed playing with the Tomesaga.
Yeah, it was cool. I like the fact that if you thumb through the deck before each game, you can know what's potential that you have to focus on, but you only get to see 3 of them. So then it's like, okay, these are the 3 things that even though I'm trying to go for the win, I'd like to go for the win via these routes.
Yes.
So I really tried that in all 3 games, and it didn't work out for me. I was able to collect tomes throughout. I think I collected more in-game tomes than you did throughout the series.
I think Naveen had Tomesaga tunnel vision.
I
honestly.
did.
Every time we would play the game, he would just gun for those objectives.
My thought process was, if I can pick up 2 of the 3 in play and still win the game, then that's a huge spread. Problem was I wasn't winning the games because I was so focused on the Tomesaga.
And that is what I like about the Tomesaga.
Yeah.
By the way, hot tip, it is not the Tomesaga, it is the Tomesaga. That is something else that we learned during the series.
Yes.
But and if you're not familiar with this in particular, this is just a way for you to play all 3 of these games in one campaign by presenting everybody with specific objectives that if you win them, they'll give you a power to use in the next game. And at the end of the whole trilogy, whoever has the most tomes wins the entire campaign.
Yeah, and tomes are literally like a little card. So
Yeah.
if you're familiar with it, then you know.
And so the thing that I really liked about the Tomesaga is it doesn't really take away too much from the actual game experience. Like, it is a perfect complement. It's just a supplementary thing to tie everything together to keep everybody kind of involved
Yes.
from game to game. Yeah, you're a lot more invested
Yes.
in the next games afterwards
Yes.
if you play them all as one campaign.
Yeah, especially if you get some of those in-game tomes. It's nice knowing, like, ooh, I have this power in the next game. And you kind of marinate on it and be like, okay, so I get points for every time I do XYZ, or I get to do this XYZ. So
Yeah.
how can I shape that into the next game? And so it was really, really exciting for me to have 2 of them almost every single game
Yeah.
going into the next one.
But I also liked how it kind of balanced. Like, if you won the first game, the next game you're gonna have less money and you're gonna go last in
Yes.
turn order.
Your
as
dibs.
as compared to your opponents, right?
Mhm.
I really like it. It's definitely not mandatory, and I think that speaks to the trilogy on its own. The fact that these games are so independently entertaining on their own that you don't need the Tomesaga. But if you enjoy all 3 games and you know you're going to play all of them,
Exactly.
and you would like to do them as a campaign, this is a no-brainer.
Yep.
Especially if you enjoy playing co-ops, because there is a co-op scenario for all 3 of these games. We played the Architects one. It was really hard.
Yes, it was hard.
Probably not my favorite way to play any of these games, but we've been told that the Paladins one is really good. We haven't played the other 2 co-op yet. All right, and finally, our final ranking. Now, there are only 3 games, so we skipped out on superlatives this time,
Sure,
but
yeah.
we'll kind of try to embed them in our ranking.
Yep.
We also talked about this already, since there are only 3 games,
Right.
and we have the exact same ranking, so we'll just do this together.
Sure, yeah.
Okay? So, starting with number 3, our least favorite in this trilogy that we've been just, throwing compliments at
Gushing
this whole
over,
time,
yeah.
gushing over, is...
It's Architects for me. Yeah.
Yes.
And I think for you as well.
Yes, so this was number 3 for us. This is the lightest of the 3 games, which is not a bad thing. This is something that I think is best played at higher player counts, which is probably part of the reason why, for me at least, it is the lowest one of the 3. It plays fine at 2. The way that we did it in our series is we played with Constantine.
Yeah, a bot.
A bot player who would remove pieces off the board. I don't necessarily know if I were to play it again at 2, if I would play with Constantine.
Oh, really? See, I think Architects
Yeah,
because,
we kind of differ in that.
Yeah, I think I would, because then it just kind of creates a little bit more chaos, which is kind of Architects, because they can steal your workers and stuff. You kind of want that little chaos. If not, then it's just you and me. I don't know. Like, are you going to be going and stealing my workers
Totally not.
as often, so Constantine kind of just forces that flow
Yes.
a little bit more. So for me, I think I would only play with Constantine at 2 players. I would say, I've played this 2 and 3 players. I've never played it. You can play it up to 5 players. I'm thinking 4 players would be the sweet spot. So in a 4-player game, I think everyone there's enough checks and balances. There's a lot of opportunity to go hijack other people's workers and throw them in the slammer and get some cash. But I think 4 players is that sweet spot.
Now, of the 3 games, I think that this is the easiest one to get into because it is the lightest one. So if you're looking for an entry into the trilogy, this is not a bad place to start.
Yep.
It probably is the best place to start, honestly. Another quick tip, if you are going to play the Tomesaga, you must play with the non-asymmetric sides of the player boards. That is a big mistake that we made the first time we played through the Tomesaga because we did a practice run before filming it.
Yeah.
That just breaks the game so much.
Definitely. Well, we'll tell you what happened. One of the tomes was have 13 on the virtue track, and Monique had an asymmetric player power that started her off at like 10 on the virtue track. So she was like, okay, I'll just gain 3 virtue. Oh, I got one of the tomes.
Like, that's a tome?
Yeah,
that's easy.
wow.
Let's do it.
Yeah, so... And I was like in the corruption side or the non-virtuous side. And
no, everybody has to have the same starting benefits.
Yep.
And so that is Architects. It is number 3 for us, but we still highly enjoyed it. It is probably the most thematic of the 3. Oh, and we played with the Age of Artisans expansion, which is excellent. This is, in my opinion, I think this is a very, very good.
Yeah, that is a good one.
Expansion in general. It doesn't change the game; it just enhances the base game.
Yep.
And I love it when expansions do that. So really great job on the Age of Artisans expansion. Number 2. So this one was really hard for me. I think you made your decision.
I did, yeah.
Pretty immediately. The reason why is because we played the next 2. I played Paladins and I thought, oh, for sure, this is the best one. And then I played Viscounts and I was like, wait, hold on. This one might be better. I really like deck building.
Yeah.
But after a lot of thought, we both agree.
Our number 2 is Viscounts of the West Kingdom.
Yes.
Fantastic game. It is definitely the number 2 for me. The mechanisms in this game are really, really cool. I like the way that the board flows. Where you kind of manage your hands and you're trying to play your cards in a right sequence to have the right symbols out so that you can go around the board with your Viscount and perform certain actions. There's essentially 4 main types of actions in the game, and it's very, very clever. It's a very clever design.
Yeah.
It is interesting because there is more interaction in this game than in Paladins, but less interaction than there is in Architects.
Yes, that's right. Also, part of the reason why Architects is not the best at 2, because you need that interaction to let that game shine.
Exactly.
This is kind of like a nice middle ground. I think that this game still plays really well at 2. I think I would prefer it at 2 because my biggest pet peeve with this one is the length, because the players on the table determine the length of the game, which is really, really, really interesting idea. I like it when games do that, but the issue is sometimes it can run a little bit long. I love deck building games, and this has a strong deck building component to it, and that also adds to the tempo of the game, which is one of my favorite parts of this game, because you're just going around this circular board and you're going around and around and around. That's it. You do that until the game ends.
Until the game ends,
You're just doing different combinations of those 4 actions that Naveen mentioned. You can't do them all. You want to, and you see other people doing things that you're not doing and scoring points for that and being envious of them. That is what characterizes this game for me. Constantly saying, oh God, Naveen got that. I should be doing that. But I'm doing my own thing here. And so just figuring out how to get the proper people into your deck who are going to work with your strategy is what makes this game really fun for me. But yeah, like I said, the length. It's all about the length.
Yeah, because the length of the game is basically if one of 2 piles becomes depleted, that basically signals the end. And the 2 piles are either debt or deeds, are they?
Deeds, yes.
Yeah, debt or deeds. And so I think that is one of my favorite parts of the game. Yes, I agree with you on the length of time, but the fact that if the debts deplete, then you want to have the most deeds.
Yes.
So there's kind of this inversely proportional kind of relationship between what is being depleted throughout the game plus what you have been doing throughout the game, and you kind of want to be able to hedge against both.
And what you can score.
What you can score at the end, exactly.
Yeah. But in general, I do like this one a lot. I think that the middle castle thing that you kind of look at whenever there's any kind of like plastic toy looking things in board games, you always kind of wonder like, oh, is that going to be gimmicky or is that going to be cool? Right?
It's cool.
It worked.
Yeah.
Works. For me, it's cool. What is your favorite player count, by the way?
I know you said yours was 2. I think mine would probably be 3 because of that plastic thing in the center, that castle in the center. I think I like it at 3 players because there's a little bit more checks and balances. There's a little bit more competition for the manuscripts, more competition for the castle as well.
That is a good point. I think I'm going to change my answer and say that this game is probably best at 3. I feel like in this game there's nothing worse than seeing your opponent just go, okay, well, I'm going to put somebody in the castle and it's going to move this and I'm going to move that, and then like 15 minutes later they're still moving around the castle, right?
They're just staying on the inner road.
Yes.
And just
So you need that third person to kick people
to
out.
be like, no,
That
no,
is
you can't do that.
integral.
So that was our number 2. That is Viscounts. So that
Which means
yes, our number 1.
Dun, 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 dun. Paladins. Paladins is so good.
It is very
This
good,
game
yeah.
is so good. It's so weird looking when you first take it out of the box.
You're
That
like-
was my first.
Yeah, it's like, which color do you want to be? Oh, you're not any color.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
No, well, for me it was the player boards. I had some
yeah.
culture shock when we first pulled this out. Learning it to get ready for the series, we pulled out the player boards and we were like, so is that the main board? Why are there 4 of them?
Yeah.
Everybody has a main board, right? It's the strangest looking game, but it is so good.
Yeah, this is a game where you must plan your strategy. You must pick a path, or at least just maybe 1 or 2 paths that you really want to go down. This game will punish you if you try to specialize in everything because of the feedback loops that everything is. Like, you need your power to feed into your, whatever the black resource is, which is also then into the red resource. So, or the blue resource. So it's very, very interesting in that way that you really want to try to figure out combinations. How can this resource feed into this one so it can just feed right back into it, and then they can both kind of just go up.
They're not technically resources, they're like elements, right? The 3 different elements that you have on your tracker on the left-hand side. This game has 2 main things going for it. You're trying to bump up those tracks in order to do the things on your board that require you to be at a certain level on those tracks. Everything else in the game is kind of supplementary. Like, you have your paladins who will help you do those things. You have the workers that you need in order to do those things, right? But the main point is to get those buildings out, to hire, do all those actions out on your player board. And one of the big reasons why I think the game punishes you if you try to do everything is because you only score points for putting out like the last 3 buildings. Or like,
exactly.
It's not one of those games where you score points for everything. It's one of those games where everything can help you do other things. It's just a constant efficiency strategy game. Like, you are just trying to be efficient the whole way through because there are ways for you to earn more workers. Somewhere down the line, you're going to have a moment of, oh my gosh, I did not calculate that into my strategy, and now I'm suddenly inefficient. What is this going to cost me? What am I going to do with this excess sometimes?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's the parts where it always gets like, oh no, is where you have multiple colors of meeples, and sometimes you just tuck in one colored meeple in the wrong spot, and you're like, oh no, I need that green one now, but I put them in that middle, like, no man's land kind of zone.
That's painful.
Yeah, that's always painful. But one of my favorite parts of this game is the fact that you draw 3 of the paladins.
Yes.
You're gonna play one is going bye-bye, and the other one you can stack knowing that it's coming later.
That is really cool.
That setup is really, really cool.
It's funny because, you choose a paladin and it gives you one special benefit to use that round. And you're going to say to yourself, I'm going to try to use the heck out of this paladin's power.
Milk it,
But then you realize, like, I can only actually do it twice.
Yeah, that's right.
Like, it always feels like something you're going to want to tap into several times, but there's only so much you can do in a round, right? And so we really love this game. This is a game that we talked about the most. Like, after we filmed it, after we even played it the first couple times, this is definitely the heaviest of the 3. So if you're kind of looking, like we were mentioning earlier, if you're looking into just kind of getting into the series, maybe you want to introduce some of these games to new gamers, Architects all the way.
Yeah, for sure.
But if you're looking for maybe the crunchier experience, this one.
Yes.
It can cause some significant analysis paralysis, which is the reason why I prefer this at 2.
Yeah, I prefer this at 2 for that reason, as well as this is a pretty multiplayer solitaire game. There's very little competition in terms of kind of competing for certain things. I mean, there's some cards out there and also some spaces on that main board.
It's not like Architects.
But it's not like Architects.
Where you're throwing people in jail.
Yeah,
right?
There's some levels of competition, obviously, but it's not that much. And you're really kind of honed in on your own board, and you're trying to figure out, okay, how do I make all these different actions work? How can I take this action a second time? And none of that is related to what Monique is doing on her board. You know, so for that reason, I would say I would pretty much only play this 2 players, because at 3 and 4 players, it will add more time.
It will.
Unlike Viscounts, which I think it, kind of scales properly. The way you kind of seed those different decks. In this one, it's still 7 rounds, so everybody has to take their turns, and you can't move on until the next player has taken their turns. You can't all take the same turns at the same time.
Yeah, it's true. And so you might have a 4-hour game.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
And so with that being said, this is probably my favorite of the 3 to play at 2. So if you're looking for the best at 2, probably Paladins. And that is pretty much it for our West Kingdom trilogy. So final ranking was number 1, Paladins, the start of the show. Yeah. Number 2, Viscounts, and 3, Architects. Yep. We would love to hear if anybody out there has played all 3, which ones are your favorite, or if you haven't played all 3, which ones have you played and what did you think of them? Please let us know in the comments down below. We would love to hear from you.
Now we do want to mention that we are going to be starting another series. It seems to be kind of something that we always like to do. We will be playing through all of Uwe Rosenberg's titles, or a solid majority of all his titles.
Yeah, not all of them.
Yeah, very.
Scared me there.
Yeah, maybe 80% to 90% of his titles. And then also we are starting a Mind Clash Games series, where we'll be playing 2 different versions of Tricarion, as well as 2 different versions with expansions of Anachrony. So join us starting next week for the start of those. We are looking forward to playing those and showcasing them. And thank you all so much for watching the video. We hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to see more videos like this in the future, please consider subscribing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.